For 70 years, missile defense has relied on one simple assumption. You can only fight what you can see coming. Hypersonic weapons break that assumption. They don't fly like ballistic missiles. They don't move like cruise missiles. They travel too fast to track, too low to intercept, and too unpredictably to defend against. Russia, China, and the United States are now locked in a race to build weapons too fast to stop and too important to ignore. This is the story of how hypersonics are rewriting the future of warfare. Hypersonic flight begins in a realm where physics becomes hostile. Above Mach 5, the air itself turns into an adversary. Temperatures on leading edges can spike to 1,500 to 2,500 degrees Celsius, hot enough to weaken steel, degrade composites, and cook electronics if they aren't shielded. At these speeds, air can ionize, forming a plasma sheath around the vehicle that interferes with radio links and radar. Engineers call this radio blackout, once known from re-entering space capsules, now encountered deliberately in hypersonic designs. Drag becomes a crushing force. Small changes in angle of attack can create massive asymmetric loads. Shockwaves form and merge around the vehicle, behaving like invisible barriers that an airframe must punch through without ripping apart. The challenge isn't simply going fast. It's staying controllable and accurate while the air tries to tear you apart. To operate in this regime, nations have had to develop high-temperature ceramics, carbon-carbon composites, ablative coatings, and navigation systems hardened against vibration and heat. Modern computational fluid dynamics has become indispensable, modeling real gas flows at Mach 5 to 20, where old aerodynamic rules no longer apply. Two categories dominate the hypersonic landscape: glide vehicles and cruise missiles. Hypersonic glide vehicles are carried aloft by rocket boosters, reaching near space before separating and beginning a long, controlled descent. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, they don't fall along predictable arcs. Instead, they dive shallowly into the thin upper atmosphere, generating lift and executing lateral cross-range maneuvers that can shift their path by hundreds of kilometers. Their trajectories are depressed and unpredictable, making early detection harder. Hypersonic cruise missiles follow a different philosophy. They accelerate to high supersonic speeds using a booster, then ignite a scramjet, an engine that burns fuel in a supersonic airflow. Scramjets lack rotating compressors. They rely on the missile's own velocity to compress incoming air. Once lit, they can sustain hypersonic speeds for extended periods, allowing these missiles to fly low, weave through terrain cues, and approach targets from unexpected angles. Programs like the X-43 and X-51 proved the concept. Operational weaponization is underway now. Both weapon types exist for the same strategic purpose: to compress reaction time and overwhelm existing missile defense. Traditional ballistic defense relies on long detection windows and unpredictable paths. Hypersonics deliberately live outside those assumptions. They fly in the gray zone between space and atmosphere, too high for cruise missile radars and too low for exo-atmospheric sensors. This seam forces defenders into late detection, shorter engagement windows, and enormous uncertainty about where the weapon will be next. For interceptors that depend on prediction, uncertainty is lethal. Russia was the first country to move hypersonics from theory to development. The motivation was rooted in Russian fears that expanding US missile defense networks, ground-based interceptors, Aegis ships, and THAAD batteries might one day threaten the credibility of Moscow's nuclear deterrent. Russia responded by investing in weapons designed explicitly to defeat those defenses. Avangard is Russia's flagship system, a nuclear-armed glide vehicle carried by legendary UR-100 NUTT-KH missiles and future Sarmat ICBMs. Russian officials claim peak speeds above Mach 20 with high G maneuvers. Western analysts treat the highest numbers cautiously, but agree that Avangard's depressed maneuvering path poses a significant challenge to mid-course interceptors. Whether Mach 15 or Mach 25, its purpose is the same: bypass missile defense. Kinzhal, carried by the MiG-31K aircraft, is derived from the Iskander ballistic missile. While marketed as hypersonic, it behaves more like a high-speed quasi-ballistic system, reaching Mach 6 to 10 in terminal flight. It has been used repeatedly in Ukraine. Several Kinzhals have been intercepted by Patriot PAC-3 systems, indicating that while dangerous, it does not possess the maneuverable unpredictability of a true glide vehicle. Zircon, Russia's hypersonic cruise missile, is designed for naval launch from frigates and submarines. Russia claims speeds of Mach 8 to 9 with high maneuverability, capabilities that would dramatically shrink reaction times for US carrier groups. While questions remain about Zircon's seeker performance and production scale, its design clearly reflects Russia's intent to threaten maritime assets at speed. Russia's strength is demonstration. It showed working hypersonic prototypes before anyone else. But its weakness is scale. Limits Russia's ability to mass-produce highly advanced systems. Most open-source assessments suggest Russia will field meaningful numbers, but not the hundreds required for deceptive saturation attacks. Hypersonics for Moscow are strategic signals, not a transformational arsenal. China's approach is broader. Hypersonics are integrated into Beijing's anti-access and area denial strategy aimed at deterring or delaying Russian intervention in the Pacific. The DF-17 missile, paired with the DF-ZF glide vehicle, is now considered operational, with the ability to threaten US bases across Japan, Taiwan, and Guam. Its depressed trajectory and maneuverability complicate defense, while its range fits neatly into China's doctrine: deny adversaries the ability to mass forces near China's shores. China's 2021 fractional orbital hypersonic test marked a turning point. The system launched into low orbit, partially circled the Earth, then released a glide vehicle toward a target. The test demonstrated the potential ability to attack from directions US radars were not optimized to watch, including over the South Pole. Accuracy reportedly lagged behind Western standards, but the concept shocked US defense planners. It suggested a future where China could combine orbital mechanics with hypersonic maneuver, a dual domain that complicates tracking beyond anything deployed today. China's advantage is in industrial scale. With vast production capacity in composites, electronics, and booster manufacturing, China can field hypersonics as part of a layered kill chain that includes satellites, radars, UAVs, and long-range ballistic missiles. Hypersonics are not exotic projects. They are components in a region-wide denial architecture. The United States approaches the hypersonic race with deep technological roots, but a fractured development path. America pioneered hypersonic experiments like the X-15 and later scramjet vehicles. But after the Cold War, hypersonics lost priority as counterterrorism became the dominant mission. Funding, urgency, and industrial alignment shifted elsewhere. As Russia and China moved ahead, US hypersonic research remained siloed. Each service pursued its own system: the Air Force's ARRW, the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon, and the Navy's conventional prompt strike, with limited integration. Test failures and conservative risk tolerances slowed progress. Industry lacked sustained demand for mass production. This is now changing. LRHW units are entering early fielding. The Navy is preparing Zumwalt destroyers and later Virginia submarines for CPS deployment. The Air Force is transitioning ARRW lessons into successor programs while accelerating the Hypersonic Attack Cruise Missile, which aims to field scramjet weapons operationally. After years of diffusion, the US is consolidating its hypersonic roadmap. But America's most decisive advantage may emerge in counter-hypersonic defense. Recognizing that no great power can allow its territory or forces to remain vulnerable indefinitely, the US is building the world's first integrated hypersonic tracking and interception architecture. New low Earth orbit satellites will provide continuous birth-to-death tracking of maneuvering threats. Glide phase interceptors are being designed to defeat weapons during their vulnerable mid-atmospheric transitions. Terminal phase defenses like THAAD and SM-6 are being upgraded with better seekers and faster engagement cycles. Across all layers, AI-assisted command and control is being introduced to compress the defender's own decision timeline. Stopping hypersonics remains extremely difficult. Detection alone is not enough. Tracking maneuvering glide bodies requires continuous observation from multiple angles. Predicting their future position requires advanced modeling rather than linear projection. And intercepting them demands high-speed seekers that can survive their own thermal environment. Directed energy weapons offer future promise, but are not yet capable of delivering the destructive power needed against hardened hypersonic bodies. Strategically, hypersonics complicate nuclear stability. They reduce warning time and introduce ambiguity about payload type. A state detecting a fast maneuvering launch may not know for minutes whether it carries a conventional or nuclear warhead. That uncertainty pressures leaders to make faster decisions in crisis, sometimes with incomplete information. Hypersonics don't guarantee escalation, but they narrow the space for diplomacy and widen the margins of error. Meanwhile, more nations are entering the field. Japan and Australia are developing scramjet systems. India is pursuing both offensive hypersonics and hypersonic interceptors. European states are exploring cooperative programs. Hypersonics have become a benchmark of technological maturity and strategic ambition, a new dividing line between first-tier and second-tier military powers. Operationally, hypersonics will reshape the battlefield. Carrier strike groups, once symbols of untouchable reach, must reconsider operational distances. Forward air bases face increased vulnerability and will require hardening, dispersal, and deception. Command and control systems will rely more on autonomy because human decision cycles cannot keep pace with hypersonic timelines. Space will become the first layer of defense, not the last, as satellite networks form the backbone of detection and tracking. Hypersonic weapons are no longer experimental. They are shaping doctrine in Russia and China, accelerating in the United States, and attracting global investment. They compress decision time, break predictability, and threaten the foundations of traditional missile defense. The nation that can integrate hypersonic strike with resilient command networks and simultaneously defend against adversary hypersonics will define how future conflicts begin, unfold, and possibly end. If you've ever seen a hypersonic test, worked on these systems, or studied the technology up close, tell us in the comments. Which nation do you believe is truly leading the arms race? And which matters more for the future, unstoppable speed or the ability to stop it? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hypersonic revolution, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp and stay curious.